Okay, we're talking a little bit about powers of the government. There are different kind of powers, as you read about last night, so maybe you remember. So I need you to make a little kind of a bubble map somewhere on your paper, kind of like this. And let's start with what we call the expressed powers. And you might hear them called enumerated powers or delegated powers. They're all the same thing, right? Enumerated means like listed. And so these are powers that are actually listed in the Constitution. Basically, they are given to the federal government, usually Congress, okay? So they're expressed or enumerated powers are powers that are given to the federal government, like the power to declare war, the power to make treaties, the power to print money, anything given to the federal government and listed in the Constitution, okay? There's also these powers called implied powers that aren't necessarily listed in the Constitution, but they are given to Congress by what's called the necessary and proper clause. We talked about that, right? The elastic clause. That gives Congress the ability to make laws that we need to kind of keep up with the times. For example, laws about the internet. Well, we didn't need internet laws back in 1789. We didn't need immigration laws back in 1789. So these are laws. Implied means when you imply something, you kind of state it indirectly. So these are not listed in the Constitution. By the way, feel free to pause me whenever you want to jot down what you need to jot down. There are other kind of powers that are called concurrent powers. Concurrent is the same thing as shared, meaning they're happening at the same time. And these are powers that the states have and powers that the federal government have together. For example, when you drive from Minnesota to Wisconsin, you drive on the highway, right? Well, who's responsible for that highway? Well, it depends on what state it is in, but if it's an interstate, if it goes between states, then that's the federal government's job. But like roads around Eden Prairie, then the city of Eden Prairie and Minnesota helps take care of those roads. Borrowing money. The federal government can borrow money and the state of Minnesota can borrow money. Taxes. Eventually, when you get old enough, maybe even some of you now, you will pay the federal government money in the form of income tax, and you'll also pay state taxes, like when you go buy groceries or sales tax. Minnesota does not have a tax on clothing, which is real nice. So these are, again, concurrent powers are shared by the state and the federal government together at the same time. And then the last kind of power is what's called reserved power. These are powers that are basically, they're not listed in the Constitution. They're not implied powers given to Congress. They're not given to the state or federal governments specifically, so they are left to the states, meaning they are reserved for the states specifically. Things like marriage laws. The states get to decide how to deal with those. The states get to decide how to deal with education. Federal government does not do that. So reserved powers are actually left to the states specifically. So there you have it. These are four kind of powers that you are going to need to know. So hopefully that gives you a good little visual diagram and is helpful. Okay.